We have also just tonight received the transcript of testimony before the Judiciary Committee in the House from Hope Hicks. Hope Hicks is the first Trump White House official to have to testify to Congress about the Mueller report since it was partially published. We now know from the transcript of her testimony, which we've just received, that Hope Hicks was well armed in terms of legal firepower when she sat down before that committee yesterday. Hope Hicks brought with her into that committee room not one, not two, not three, not four, but 5 different lawyers. The one of her 5 lawyers, 2 of her own, 2 from the White House counsel's office, and 1 from the Office of Legal Counsel at the Justice Department. She's never been a Justice Department employee. It's not entirely clear what the Justice Department was doing there, objecting to her potentially answering questions, but the Justice Department was represented too. And at the start of her testimony, it very quickly became clear what all of those lawyers, what that pyramid of lawyers was there to do. Right at the start of her testimony, the chairman of the committee, Jerry Nadler, asked Hope Hicks if she would please read from a portion of the Mueller report. It's a portion of the report that describes Corey Lewandowski, who'd been a major figure in the Trump campaign. He was summoned to the White House. You might remember this incident from the Mueller report. We've talked about it a number of times here on the show. This is the incident where Corey Lewandowski takes dictation from President Trump about a message the president wants him to bring to the Attorney General. Corey Lewandowski, not a government employee, hasn't been involved since the campaign. Nevertheless, the president summons him to the White House and says, take this down. This is what I want you to go tell the Attorney General. So Jerry Nadler, the chairman of the committee, asks Hope Hicks to read that portion of the Mueller report out loud. And she does so. And then this. Chairman Nadler, are you familiar with the events described in that excerpt from the special counsel's report that you just read? Lawyer, objection. Chairman Nadler, and you are objecting on what basis, sir? Lawyer, the same basis that would call for her knowledge of events that occurred during her time as senior advisor to the White House. Chairman Nadler, in other words, you're asserting absolute immunity that she cannot testify as to any knowledge of anything that occurred after the president was inaugurated? Lawyer, during her time as advisor to the president, she cannot. Chairman Nadler, she cannot refer to anything? Your contention is that as a result of absolute immunity, she cannot state anything about her knowledge of anything during the period of time in which she was employed in the White House? The lawyer, for the purpose of this hearing, yes. The chairman, okay. Question to Ms. Hicks. When Mr. Lewandowski visited the White House on June 19th, 2017, he was not an employee of the White House or the administration, correct? Lawyer, objection. Chairman Nadler, that's a matter of public knowledge. It has nothing to do with whether or not she was White House staff. She would know that in any event, so it should not be covered by this. The lawyer, under the terms of absolute immunity described in Mr. Cipollone's letter, the letter from the White House counsel, she may not speak about anything that occurred during the time of her employment in the White House as a close advisor to the president. Chairman Nadler, anything that occurred during that time? The lawyer, during her service as close advisor to the president. Chairman Nadler, so did a war break out between Israel and Egypt during that time period? Lawyer, same objection. Chairman Nadler, same objection. Well, I'll ask these questions for the record so you can object for the record. Question to Ms. Hicks. Do you recall if you knew why Mr. Lewandowski was at the White House that day? Lawyer, objection. Chairman Nadler, were you present for any portion of that meeting? Lawyer, objection. Question, do you know if anyone else was present for any portion of that meeting? Objection. Have you discussed that meeting with anyone? Do you know if anyone else was present for any portion of that meeting? Objection. Have you discussed that meeting with anyone outside the White House? Objection. And I know this at this point sounds like slam poetry, but I mean, legally, this whole thing probably has a point because Congress not only wants to ask Hope Hicks these questions and other White House staff these types of questions, they think that Hope Hicks and other White House staff will ultimately be legally compelled to answer these questions by a court. Because a court, they believe, will eventually rule that the basis on which these lawyers, the White House and the Justice Department are objecting here, is a made-up basis. It's not a real legal basis to prevent a witness from testifying to Congress. And so, I mean, in pages and pages and pages for hours and hours and hours of Hope Hicks's testimony, they ask her lots and lots of questions that she does not answer. And this fleet of lawyers instead objects. But I think the reason they have gone through this exercise is for a forward-looking reason, which is that they're getting the supposed legal basis for those objections on the record, so that they hope a judge in the future will later rule that these objections to her answering all these questions, those objections are not legally sound. And after a court has a chance to rule on that, she will ultimately have to answer. So again, I am not a member of the Judiciary Committee, and I was not there, and I have no inside knowledge. But that is what it seems like they were doing here. That said, the whole thing isn't just objection, objection, objection. They also do get her on the record on a whole bunch of stuff. Here, for example, is Hope Hicks testifying yesterday behind closed doors in the Judiciary Committee about the prospect of getting foreign assistance to help a campaign, and should that occasion a call to the FBI. Question from committee staff. To your knowledge, did the campaign ever report any information about contacts of any kind with Russia to any law enforcement official? Answer, report to law enforcement when? During the campaign? Question, during the campaign. Answer, not to my knowledge. Did you receive a defensive, what's called a defensive FBI briefing or any kind of law enforcement briefing while you were in the campaign? Answer, I did not, no. Are you aware of whether the campaign received such a briefing? Answer, I'm not aware. Question, do you understand what I mean by defensive FBI briefing? I do, yes, sir. What does that mean to you, Ms. Hicks? Answer, it means to have law enforcement make you aware of potential risks and how best to protect yourself if those risks exist already or if they might present themselves at some point in the future. Question, on July 27th, 2016, Mr. Trump publicly stated, Russia, if you're listening, I hope you're able to find the 30,000 emails that are missing. I think you'll probably be rewarded mightily by our press. Do you recall that statement? Answer, I do, yes, sir. Question, did you have any discussions with Mr. Trump about that statement prior to the statement being made? Answer, not prior to, no. Question, did you have any discussions with him about the statement after it was made? Answer, I did, yes. Question, were you with him at the time he made the statement? I was, yes, sir. And when did you discuss it with him? When we got back on the plane to go to our next location. And what was that discussion? The discussion was me informing him that some in the media had taken the expression quite literally, and that they were concerned he was encouraging foreign governments to, you know, locate those emails. And that was obviously something that the media felt was extremely inappropriate and demanded a response from Mr. Trump and the campaign as to what exactly he meant by that. The media felt it was inappropriate. Question, and did you have a view on the appropriateness of this statement? Good follow-up. Answer, you know, it was my understanding from both the way he made the remark and the discussions afterwards that this was a little bit tongue-in-cheek. This was not a comment that was intended as an instructive or a directive to a foreign government. It was a joke, and that was the intent based on my conversation with him, and that was it. Question, and what did he say in that conversation about the statement? Answer, just what I just said, that it was intended as a lighthearted comment. Question, the president last week told George Stephanopoulos that he would take information about an opponent from a foreign adversary in the next election. He said, quote, there's nothing wrong with listening. It's not an interference. They have information. I think I'd take it. If I thought there was something wrong, I'd go maybe to the FBI if I thought there was something wrong. Do you think that was a joke? Answer, I don't know. I have not discussed that remark with the president. I didn't see the entire interview, so I saw the clip you're referencing. I don't know if there was additional context. I don't think that was a joke based on what I saw. Question, all right. In your experience now, knowing all that you do, you've reflected on it, would you take, I'm asking you this based on your experience and the expertise you've developed, would you take foreign oppo information from a foreign government if that were offered when working on a political campaign? Answer, you know, knowing how much chaos has been sowed as a result of something like the Steele dossier, no, I would not. Question, and again, I'm asking you about your expert opinion. Would you advise another person to do that if they were in a position to do so? Answer, no, I would not. Question, would you call the FBI if you were offered such information? Answer, if I felt it was legitimate enough to have our law enforcement dedicate their time to it, sure. Question, if you felt it was genuine or credible, you would call the FBI, right? Answer, yes. And then the committee staff says, according to Mr. Mueller's report, there were over 120 contacts between the Trump campaign and individuals associated with the campaign in Russia. That's Russian individuals. That's during the campaign. So we will see how the Judiciary Committee follows up on this and, you know, what they may be able to get Hope Hicks to answer if and when they take the administration to court over what they're saying witnesses can. But there is one more episode here. From all the objections, no, she won't talk about that, no, she won't talk about that. There are these few things that she does talk about. And there's one more episode here from the campaign, which Hope Hicks just testified about, that is of interest because this is not the way we previously publicly understood what was going on at a very key moment in the campaign. A very key moment just in terms of how the overall campaign worked out, but also a very key moment in terms of Russian interventions in the campaign to benefit Trump. We learned something from Hope Hicks's testimony here about what was going on in the Trump campaign at that time, which is something we did not know before. So again, listen closely here. This is a couple of things we knew about, but we didn't know they went together. Anyway, you'll see what I mean. Question from committee staff. When did you first become aware of the Access Hollywood tape? Answer, about an hour before it was made public. Question, and what was your reaction to it? Honestly, my reaction was, it was a Friday afternoon and I was hoping to get home to see my family for the first time in a few months, and that wasn't happening. Question, did you have any other reactions? Answer, look, I obviously knew that it was going to be a challenge from a communication standpoint. Did you discuss it with Mr. Trump? I did, yes. Tell me about those discussions, please. I made him aware of the email I received from the Washington Post, which described the tape. And I don't know if the initial email did this, but certainly one of the subsequent emails in exchange provided a transcript of the tape. So I described those different components to Mr. Trump and tried to evaluate the situation. And how did he react to that? You know, he wanted to be certain before we engaged that it was legitimate. And I think we all felt it was important that we request to see the actual tape or listen to the audio before responding. Was he upset? Yes. I think everybody was in, like, a little bit of shock. And did he ask you did he seek your advice on how to respond? Yes. There were quite a few of us, so it was very much a group discussion given that this unfolded at a debate prep session. Question, and do you remember who else you discussed the tape with? Answer, who else was present there? Yeah, at that time. Sure, Reince Priebus, Chris Christie, Jeff Sessions, Stephen Miller, Jason Miller, Steve Bannon, David Bossie, Kellyanne Conway, later Jared Kushner. I think that's it. Question, do you recall reaching out to Michael Cohen about the tape? Answer, my recollection of reaching out to Michael took place the following day, and it wasn't about the tape, meaning it wasn't about the Access Hollywood tape. She says, quote, it was about, this is gonna get confusing, but the day after the Access Hollywood tape, there were rumors going around. I'm not sure exactly where. I heard it from our campaign spokesperson, Katrina Pearson, who was sort of like she had a lot of contacts, grassroots. She had called to tell me that, or maybe sent me a message about rumors of a tape involving Mr. Trump in Moscow with, you know, can I say this? And then the transcript notes, discussion off record. And then she comes back on record. Trump in Moscow with, you know, Russian hookers, participating in some lewd activities. And so obviously I felt this was exactly how it had been described to me, which was a rumor. Nonetheless, I wanted to make sure that I stayed on top of it before it developed any further to try to contain it from spiraling out of control. And the person that made me aware of the rumor said that TMZ might be the person that has access to this tape. I knew Michael Cohen had a good relationship with Harvey Levin, who works at TMZ. So I reached out to Michael Cohen to ask if he had heard of anything like this. If Harvey contacted him, if he could please be in touch with me. Committee staff. And do you recall anything happening in connection with WikiLeaks at this time? Yes. And what happened in that connection, Ms. Hicks? I believe the same day that the Access Hollywood tape was released, WikiLeaks also released emails from John Podesta's account. Question, do you have any information about how those came to be released at that time? Answer, no. Okay, and any other reason you reached Mr. Cohen besides the Harvey Levin connection? Answer, no. I know what Michael said in his testimony about reaching out to him to help spin reporters. Number one, I wouldn't reach out to Michael for help spinning reporters at that point in time. And number two, you know, there was really no spinning that tape. So this is not long before the election, right? This is October, right? Before the election, the Access Hollywood tape comes out. The whole campaign like threatens to blow up, right? We know from subsequent accounts that like senior people on the Trump campaign were telling Trump to drop out of the race, to resign. I mean, they're threatening to quit themselves. But now, from Hope Hicks, we know that the very next day after the Access Hollywood tape comes out, like as the campaign is spiraling maybe to death because of the Access Hollywood tape and its impact, the next day, the Trump campaign goes into a totally different kind of damage control on a totally different matter entirely, because they hear that there's a tape, Russian hookers, lewd activities, Trump in Moscow. Number one, that means that the campaign, and presumably the candidate, were not, for the first time, being told about the rumored existence of the Trump hooker P tape when James Comey sat the president down during the transition and very gingerly told him about it. James Comey has written about that interaction with the president during the transition. He has described it as if the president appeared to be very shocked to hear about this tape. Right? He was outraged to hear the rumors of this tape. Remember, I'm a germaphobe. That's ridiculous. But now we know that Trump and his campaign had heard about that supposed tape and had been trying to track it down themselves, at least since the previous October. And they had tasked Michael Cohen with handling that. So it was feigned surprise from President Trump to James Comey when Comey thought he was telling Trump about that tape for the first time in January during the transition. Secondly, we now know that the campaign's reaction when they heard about this tape, this supposed tape, was that they should call Michael Cohen. He's the guy who can handle this. When they got this news that there might be a Russian hooker's tape from Trump in Moscow, right? At that moment, they're already having probably the biggest freak out of the campaign, understandably, about the Access Hollywood tape, where the president brags about sexually assaulting women and getting away with it. But while that is unspooling, within that 24-hour period, they stop on a dime and instead call Michael. Call Michael. We got a situation. We got to get a handle on this. How did Hope Hicks put it in the transcript? She says, quote, "I wanted to make sure that I stayed on top of it before it developed any further to try to contain it from spiraling out of control." And of course, we now know from the Mueller report that Michael Cohen, in fact, followed up on the rumored tape or tapes of Trump in Moscow, since we know he received a text message from a Russian businessman that said this, quote, "Stopped flow of tapes from Russia, but not sure if there's anything else, just so you know." In an interview with the FBI and Mueller's prosecutors, that Russian businessman who told Cohen he stopped the flow of tapes from Russia, according to Mueller's report, he told the FBI in a subsequent interview that when he said tapes, he was referring to compromising tapes of Trump rumored to be held by persons associated with the Russian real estate conglomerate Crocus Group, which had helped host the 2013 Miss Universe pageant in Russia. So that Russian businessman, the one who told Michael Cohen the same month that the Access Hollywood tape came out, when Cohen had been tasked by the campaign with handling that, that same Russian businessman who told Cohen he had stopped the flow of tapes from Russia, that same businessman was involved in the Trump Tower Moscow real estate project, which the president was trying to set up during the campaign that he was keeping secret, right? This guy was working on Trump Tower Moscow secretly with the Trump campaign while the president was denying having any business dealings in Russia. And then from Russia, he was also apparently helping Michael Cohen out with the hooker tape freakout, which the campaign had tasked Michael Cohen with fixing. We learned today that the House Intelligence Committee wants that Russian businessman's testimony as well. They are seeking testimony from him. They're going to get testimony from Felix Sater tomorrow, who was Michael Cohen's partner on Trump Tower Moscow. I mean, they got one Trump administration witness. They've had one so far since Mueller's report was concluded, right? One witness who yesterday sat down with 5 lawyers and objected to basically everything she was asked. And they still got all of that out of her. This is going to get more interesting over time, not less. Stay with us.
Well, we hope you enjoyed our video. If so, please give this video a thumbs up and hit that like button. Thank you for tuning in to the Center of Political Debates, Public and Press Discussions. We invite you to join our political news and debate community. Join by clicking the subscribe button below. Hit the bell button for notification of more breaking news political videos. And we also invite you to join our Facebook debate group and voice your political input. You can see the Facebook link in the description below. We'll see you soon with our next breaking news videos.